I'm delighted to be joined by Bill Addy, the Chief Executive of the Liverpool BID company, and his wonderful new empire of offices here in the centre of Liverpool. Bill, good to see you, and just tell us a little bit about the reasons for the move, because obviously, you know, the BID is becoming an increasingly important part of the fabric of Liverpool's business community, and I think important really to have office space that evidences the work that you do.
Yeah, well, thanks, and it's great to have you and host you here, socially distanced, into our, as you say, our new offices in the centre of Liverpool City. So the BID has been in place in the city since 2005. Historically, we've had offices in the retail core of the city, and in fact, our last offices that we've just moved out of, they were good offices right in Lord Street, but they were the landlord was Grosvenor Property, Grosvenor Liverpool Fund, who are seeking to redevelop those offices. So we then set out on a task of trying to find and relocate. And you know, we talk about the commercial district and the difficulty we have in the commercial district. As somebody who's just undertaken that search for premises and a relocation, it is difficult. The availability of space is very limited in our commercial district, and that's why we've chosen to come and stay within the commercial district, and we're right at the core of the business here at St Nicholas House.
Makes sense. Wonderful views across our fabulous waterfront. So it must be a pleasure to come in every day and look across the Mersey.
It's good, and I'm just looking forward to the days when we can move back into the commercial district, when we get more people back into the office. You know, I'm working out of the office now because socially distanced, and we do provide services into the BID district at this moment in time. So our police officers that are funded by the BID are both based here in our offices, and our street rangers are also are operating from these offices. So we need to have people on site. That's why I'm now working back from the office, and it's good to be able to do that, but again, socially distanced. And I am really looking forward to getting all of the team back so we can fully get right behind all the plans that we have for the BID this year and into the future.
Now, obviously, the last 12 months been some serious challenges, particularly around big commercial spaces and, of course, retail. Two things that will be exercising the minds of the business improvement district as we move forward. What do you think we need to start to do in terms of bouncing back? I mean, it's a phrase that I think is a bit tired already, to be honest, but nonetheless, it's one that we need to start to think about carefully as we prepare for people to hopefully see the easing of lockdown restrictions and get back into some sort of normality.
Yeah, we talk about bounce back, we talk about build back better, we talk about the recovery. We know that Liverpool, in terms of retail, has it's improved immeasurably over the last 10, 15 years with the onset of Liverpool One, and the way that Liverpool's retail is very strong, and it's a great offer, and people do travel to come here into Liverpool. COVID and in 2019, at the beginning of March last year, saw a footfall drop from the highs where it was right down to lost about 80% of footfall. So from over 1.3 million footfall visits a week, dropped down to over just about 100,000. We saw with the recovery when we reopened non-essential retail in June of 2020 and then hospitality in July, that we saw a good recovery from that. We did come back fairly strongly. Now, people will argue that because of that, we ended up with the situation with COVID increasing. We had lockdown 2, and now we're in lockdown 3. But we're seeing that we're moving towards now a phase when we will start a reopening of our city centre, our retail core, and that actually will be sustainable because of vaccines, that we touch wood, that we won't go back into a position of lockdown. So we know that Liverpool is a robust, we've got a good retail offer. Now what we need to do is to plan to move forward to reopen that hospitality and retail in a way that's sustainable, in a way that will see us get back to full occupancy, and in terms of footfall, in terms of sales. But also we need to start looking at how we shape our city centre, because the problem we've got in our city centre is that we've lost some big units. We know that we've lost Debenhams, we've lost Topshop, we've lost Topman, we've lost Evans, we've lost all of those Arcadia Group premises in the city centre. Now, Did we lose those because of COVID? No, I don't think it was. I think there were systemic issues within those businesses that COVID has enhanced. And so we've lost those brands from our high street. We need to be really focused now on how we can replace those brands. And we're seeing good businesses coming in. We know that Flannels are planning to open the former Owen Owens building on Clayton Square. The launch in the Met Quarter of GPO, food operator, the food court that's coming this summer. And Liverpool One is also showing new businesses that are coming in because people want to be here. So we've got to be very careful about how we manage the city centre, how we work with the building owners, and how we work with the independents and the businesses to bring them back into the city and get our city open and working properly. And that's what the job of the BID. That's what we've been doing throughout the pandemic. We've been providing business support. We've provided direction and signposting, advocacy for our businesses. We've also been providing, as I mentioned right at the beginning there, our police officers have been operating throughout the pandemic on the streets of the city centre. Our street rangers have been working as well, providing that cleansing support. So the work of the BID has continued during the pandemic, but the work of the BID now will take it up another step as we move forward with the recovery.
Yeah, you've mentioned some of those big brand names that have sadly been made basically redundant over the past 6 months or so. And as you say, pre-pandemic, some of those brands were struggling anyway. But actually, the retail units in Liverpool were performing quite well. You know, Debenhams in Liverpool, one of the best performing Debenhams in the country. Again, Topshop, Topman, similar. So there is some cause for optimism that when we do start to see some sort of recovery, Liverpool should be identified as a place where retail can still survive. And you've mentioned, you know, some great new initiatives that are coming down the line as well. The fact is, those are big units, and therefore it's going to feel a little bit strange, isn't it, without those places being filled. Do we need to start thinking about plans to attract new retail in there, or may that we need to look for alternative uses, do you think?
Yeah, I mean, it's interesting, isn't it, that those brands haven't gone. It's just that the way that those brands come to market now have changed because they've been bought by online retailers. So what we need to do with the physical space, with our shop units, is to look at how we reimagine them. So a perfect example is what happened with Dorothy Perkins. If you remember, Dorothy Perkins is now one of the largest Lush stores in the UK, in fact, in the world, and it's a great store selling great products in a very imaginative way that encourages and brings people in there. It's the same with Littlewoods became Primark. So this happens every generation. It happens, and it's continually happening as high streets evolve. The issue we have now is, where are the big name retailers that we don't have in the city? And there aren't so many of those. So we have to look at how we actually perhaps nurture our own retailers. We know Lush grew from its original store on Whitechapel into the position it is now. And we need to identify which are the retailers that we can bring into that space, or indeed, how else do we use that space? And a lot of the floors above retail are converted across to apartments and apart hotels, which is good as long as you continue to do that in a way which is bringing quality, well-managed accommodation into those spaces. But it's also about how do you support our independence. We know our markets, there are issues with St. John's Market, and that needs a lot of support and a lot of work with those great traders to enable them to really develop their own product. But there are other traders that we can encourage to come into some of those spaces. Perhaps we look at the idea of a market on Church Street itself, not on the street, but using one of those buildings in a way that our food halls have developed. We need to be creative, but the most important thing is we need to put some control into how we develop that. I mean, we've already written this week to Robert Jenrick, the Secretary of State, about the permitted development rights, because we're very concerned that permitted development rights now allow people to convert ground floor retail into residential. And clearly that's not what we want on Church Street. We need ground floor retail to stay as a commercial use or it could be community use, but it's something that drives footfall into the centre. And that's something that we as a BID will continue to lobby hard, that we manage the city centre in a way that actually looks to how we can use the space in the best way for the city.
Now, Bill, one of your other roles is chair of LVEN, which is the Liverpool Visitor Economy Group. And of course, the visitor economy has been a huge part of Liverpool's growth over the past decade. We've seen, some great restaurants, bars, hotels open in the city during that period. For me, if we're going to see Liverpool's recovery, they've got to be an integral part of the comeback. But crucially, of course, if they're going to be successful, we need commerce back into the city. So the commercial district needs to start to become more vibrant again, and we've got to start to see a work from work attitude return. Now, I don't know about you, but certainly in this lockdown, I've seen and heard about more people wanting to return to work in the office, wanting that social aspect of work, as well as the issues surrounding mental health, people being isolated in their own home. So working from home ain't all it's cracked up to be. I think we recognise there's going to be flexibility going forward, but what work is planned in terms of the commercial district through the BID over the next 12 months and beyond?
As you quite rightly say, that the commercial district is suffering at the moment because people are, quite rightly, people are working from home. They're not encouraged to work in the office, and we need to do that to protect ourselves. We know exactly why we're doing that. But, people have been working from home for almost a year. When we get to March, it's a year since we were first told, work from home where you can. Working from home means many different things to many different people, depending on what your home situation is. So working from home could mean working in a study if you live in a reasonable sized house, or it could actually be working with a laptop or an iPad, sat on a bed, resting on your knees, and not getting any space at all from whatever else is going on in the house, and trying to scramble for getting on connectivity on broadband, and competing with Netflix and what the rest of the family are trying to do, and your children are working homeschool. So working from home is not an idyllic environment. It was a necessity. What we need to do now is to encourage people to start working safely from the commercial districts, safely from the offices that they are in, until such time as obviously we can move away from social distancing and COVID becomes no more than getting a flu jab every year. And that will come, it's coming quicker than we anticipate. Within another 12 months, that'll probably be the situation we're in. What we need to do is make sure that people are encouraged to come back into the office when we can do that safely. And we will continue to do that. Obviously, the initiatives that Downtown is leading on, such as the Team Liverpool, will enable people to come back in. Employers need to be responsible though. Employers need to make sure that their environment is safe. And they also need to provide support for staff, because staff who have been working out of an office environment, it's going to take them some time to come back in, because naturally they'll be wary of it. Getting onto public transport, they're wary of travel on public transport. All of those issues need to be provided for, need to be taken into account when employers are planning to bring people back. And the most important element in all of this is mental health and people's mental health. We all get a bit down sometimes. You can wake up in the morning and think, well, have I got to go to work today? Or, the weather doesn't help us, and the fact that we're social isolation for so long hasn't helped us. And we need to start really thinking about people's mental health. We talk about the pandemic being a viral infection that impacts on the respiratory system, but it also impacts, as we know, on people's mental health and people's minds. And employers need to do a lot more about supporting employees and concentrating on that. And the BID will be offering training for working with partner organisations such as Downtown, such as PL and the Chamber, in providing mental health first aid training and support for employers. And we all need to be a bit kinder with each other, don't we? We all need to be a bit kinder with each other. And we say we're all in this together. We need to work together. The all for one and one for all scenario that happens, that it's very true. We are all in this, though, and we need to work together to enable this city particularly the commercial district, to come back very strong.
Looking to the summer, and obviously an important part of what the BID do is they get buy-in from the stakeholders that they work with. So every few years you go out to a ballot and you ask people to basically enable you to continue to work in the way that you have. You put together a manifesto, you go to those businesses and you say you're happy with this, and if so, vote for another period of the BID being in place. And that happens in May. But I think, you know, we spoke before, Bill, about some exciting plans, and I think plans that are well overdue, really, to extend the boundaries of the Liverpool BID so that we can take in a bigger part of the city centre, which will enable us to do two things, actually. One, obviously, raise more money, but secondly, more importantly, utilise that cash to improve those other parts of the city in the same way that we've seen those great improvements in the commercial district and the retail district thus far.
Yeah, as you said there, the BID legislation which is in place allows bids to operate, but part of that legislation says that a bid has to go back to a reballot within a term of maximum 5 years. So a bid can operate for no more than 5 years. Liverpool Bid Company operate two bids in Liverpool. We know Retail and Leisure, which was City Central, came into being in 2005 and has gone through 4 successful reballots. Commercial District came into being in 2011 and has gone through 2 successful reballots and 2 terms. We're just coming to the end of the second term, and at the end of May this year, that term ends and we need to move then forward into a renewal of the bid. And so we know before COVID that we were working on a plan for a city centre-wide bid that would cover all the properties from Leeds Street across to Parliament Street, down to the waterfront and up to the Knowledge Quarter. COVID has changed our thinking slightly in that we already have an existing retail and leisure bid, and that stays in place for another 2 years. So we will leave that in situ for 2 years. But we believe that moving forward with an expansion of the commercial district to include the waterfront, to include the commercial district itself, to include part of St George's Quarter that isn't covered by the retail bid, and then also to bring in the Knowledge Quarter, would make absolute sense for the city, and it would enable the city to have a private sector organisation of real resource that can really help the renaissance of Liverpool post-COVID. And that's the plan that we have. In terms of what happens with that, that means that every one of the businesses who are business ratepayer with a rateable value above £45,000 would get a vote, and they vote on that business plan that we will be launching very shortly.
Bill, thanks very much for your time today. Good luck with the ballot. No doubt we'll speak during the campaign to renew, and keep up the great work.
Thanks, Frank.
Cheers. If you enjoyed that video, then please subscribe to our YouTube channel on the link below and be among the first to get to listen to all the latest interviews through the Downtown Den.